Welcome to Cup of Tea. I mainly play strategy and fighting games, but starting in this video, I'll take on the journey of a solo indie developer on Roblox. Why Roblox? If you can put up with the engine's poor performance, your game is hosted for free with no hassle, cross-platform multiplayer. The biggest games on Roblox all take advantage of this, while other games, even though they're really well made or fun to play, don't quite get there because they don't. They're PC only. The game I want to make first needs easy controls so I can transfer them across all platforms. It needs to appeal to many different people. And it actually needs to be a good game because Roblox has way too many cash grabs and I will not stoop to that level. I'm going to make a competitive, turn-based game where the goal is to capture cities, and cities make money, which you use to buy units, and you use units to destroy your enemy. So starting in Roblox Studio, I decided that the camera takes priority since it's the command view. Manipulating the camera is very unintuitive in Roblox Studio. In any game engine, the camera has to be manipulated to move from one position to another, whether by inputs of the player or as a cutscene. However, what makes it unintuitive in Roblox Studio is that you cannot see the camera until you press play. There's no viewport and there's no physical manifestation of the camera, unlike Unity, where not only do you see where it is, but also what it's looking at its field of view. In Roblox Studio, you just have to press play and see what it looks like. Not only that, but when the player's camera is switched, the old one deletes itself, meaning best practice is to just use a single camera for everything and change the value whenever you would have wanted to switch to a different camera. I added a zoom function and a hotkey to switch between your character and the command view. Next up, moving the camera without the WASD keys. Change over time is often called delta, and Roblox supposedly gives us the mouse's delta, but instead it kept returning nothing, 000. So I looked into it and discovered that the delta is not measured unless the mouse state is locked, like a shift lock. But then I wouldn't be able to move the mouse, so I simply wrote my own delta function. It's just a change in position, and added it to the camera. It's not working as intended, but the bigger issue is the jump when I let go of the mouse. I added some print statements to find out what the delta is. On the last frame of holding the mouse, the mouse position jumps to 000, which is a really big change from the previous position, meaning the delta is really big and causing it to jump. So now I need to make sure that the mouse is not at the origin every time the mouse moves. And it's fixed. I tweaked the direction and made the sensitivity proportional to the zoom, so that if you're closer it moves less and if you're further it moves more. I'm quite happy with how the camera turned out, and it was a lot more effort than I was expecting. The next base mechanic I need is the tile-based terrain. I couldn't find a lot of information online on how other games do this, so in my code each tile has 4 values: X and Y, ID, and entity. X and Y decide its position on the map as coordinates. ID decide what kind of tile it is, and there can only be 1 unit on each tile, which is stored by the entity value. And by looping in a loop, I can make any number of rows and columns of tiles. To visualize it, I just loop through all of those tiles and place a corresponding brick at the X and Y coordinates. The bricks have to be scaled up, and so do the X and Y coordinates, otherwise it's really small. But it looks like this, and I decided on 3 terrain types for now. I started with grass, taking a grid block and making it green, and added the grass texture built into Roblox. Duplicating it twice gives me 2 more blocks, which I recolored again to get forest and mountain. For my mountain, I repurposed some Roblox corners into mountain pieces on top of the mountain tile and made them stone colored with some snow on top. I wasn't quite a fan of the design, so I switched everything to smooth plastic. My forest is made of some trees, and each tree has a log with some leaf blocks on it. I put the models into server storage and made sure that the block with the respective ID is copied from server storage onto the map, and that's looking a lot better for now. I'll work on more models later. At this point I encountered a lot of lag depending on how the tiles spawn in, and just for future use I have to do this anyway, so I moved everything from the server onto the client, only the visuals. By having the data on the server and the visuals on the client, it makes it a lot easier to manipulate the map on the server only, because instead of moving blocks around, I'm just moving data, which is then transferred to the player where it is visualized. This also means I can add graphics settings for people on lower end devices. The map looks a lot better at 32 by 32, and I think we have a pretty good map. Before we move on to the next thing, I'll show you how everything is organized. So as you can see, I've separated all of my camera functions over here into a camera handler module script from my inputs, which I've put in the player controller. And what that means is that expansions on the code are going to be much simpler. Like let's say we want to have cinematic camera for like a single player mode, or let's say a tech tree or something like that. We want to move the camera somewhere. That's going to be much easier. The scripts are completely independent, so we can just write a new script for the cinematic or tech tree camera and completely ignore this one and nothing will change. As opposed to say if everything were in the same code, we would have to have a bunch of values to check what state we're in to make sure not to run the wrong piece of code. The next most important mechanic is the selection. You can't give orders to units without selecting them, and you can't build anything without selecting a tile. I started by preparing a command handler script while thinking about how to select a tile. There's only one small problem. The left mouse button is already being used for dragging the camera, and only the most recently bound action of context action service goes through. Documentation says the input will pass on to the next action after returning a context action result of pass. To decide when to pass, I coded a stopwatch function which binds to the render step to start counting, and when stopped, returns the time. If the time is less than or equal to 0.1 seconds when letting go, that is a click and it passes through. To see what I'm clicking on, Roblox does have click detector objects, but I'm not sure how performant they are, so instead I'm casting a ray from the mouse to where it's pointing at. There are two ways to filter what a raycast is looking for, and I'm using both. First, raycast parameters let me filter by the descendants of an object, so I'll only check those. I made it so all instance tiles would be placed in a folder when loaded, so I can check only the folder. Second, I can specify collision groups for different objects and filter only by those collision groups. So I set the base of each tile to be in a base tiles collision group, so the ray will ignore any trees or rocks. Lastly, I made the ray travel 100 studs, even though the zoom can only go up to less than 50. Roblox gives us a 1 stud long ray already from the camera to the mouse, so using the origin and direction from that gives us everything we need. I put a string value giving the name of each tile parented to it, which I'm printing to tell us what we're clicking on. It works fine, so I quickly added a selector slightly bigger than the tile. When clicking on a tile, the value of what we've selected updates to that tile. Then, the selector is updated to go to its position, but if we click on the same tile twice, I made it so it deselects and the highlight disappears. So here's everything I've made so far. We can switch freely between the player and the command view, we can zoom in and out, pan the camera, and we can select the tile and deselect it. You don't need to do anything if you don't want to support my content. But if you do, it'd be nice if you left a comment, letting me know about some things you might want to see in the next video, if you subscribed, and if you liked the video. Anyways, thanks for watching and have a pretty cool day.